Good day, wherever you are tuned in, and it is a wonderful moment. Once again, I welcome you to the prophetic mirror, and I'm glad that God has enabled me to be alive today. This is part 2 of the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verse 17, and we are dealing with the financial crisis that is ahead of us. Today we are dealing with the issue of the coming financial crisis, and so my prayer is, as we look at these things, we were able to see in the part 1 that they are to prepare us to live for Christ. And in the time of crisis, that is not the time to prepare, but it is time to live out that character that you have. And so the time for preparation is now. The time to seek the Lord and find Him is now. For there is coming a time we may seek the Lord and He will not be found. And so going through the book of Revelation chapter 13 verse 17 is something that I'll delight to do, because from this presentation number 2 going onwards, I'll be delving in some history, and that is one area that I love so much to delve in. That is one area I like to delve in so much. And so welcome to number 2 of our presentation on Revelation chapter 13 verse 17, the coming financial crisis. And I'd like us just to read once again what Revelation 13:17 says. Father, as we have opened your word, bless it and let your spirit guide us in Jesus' name. Amen. Revelation chapter 13 verse 17, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that hath the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name, which we know that the number is 666. Now, I'm going to go through history, and I'll mostly be going through the book The Creature from Jekyll Island by Edward G. Griffiths. And so I'll just on the onset go through some of the things that Edward G. Griffiths says, and I'll give you the privilege of seeing what I'm going through in some parts. In this book, The Creature from the Jekyll Island, Edward G. Griffiths talking about the coming financial crisis, and it has been already there. They have been testing waters. He says that someone has to get this story through to the public. The problem, however, is that the public doesn't want to hear it. After all, this is bad news, and we certainly get enough of that as it is. The magnitude by which reality deviates from the accepted myth is so great that for most people, it simply is beyond credibility. Anyone carrying this message is immediately suspected of paranoia. Who will listen to a madman? That is the question that Edward G. Griffiths really asked in this book, while he is beginning the book itself, on trying to bring out the secrets of the powers that be in this world that have been controlling finances, they have been controlling the markets, they have been orchestrating different wars, they have been in charge of the pharmacia and a lot of things. And so he talks about how money is made, and how people think that they have money and they can rely on that, when actually you can rely on these things. And so I really got interested in the issue of the financial crisis in his book, The Creature from the Jekyll Island, where the many powerful men met on this island to try to come up with the Federal Reserve Bank. But look at this. This is interesting to even little children who want to know about banks and so on. Edward G. Griffiths says this: he starts his book so well and said, the bad news is that every detail of what follows is true. That is the bad news. And why is it the bad news? It is because people are clinging on their dollars and their money, thinking that it will save them when it will not save them. So he asked, what are banks for? And remember, this is a story. Let me just say this. This is a story of the men who met on the Jekyll Island to come up with the Federal Reserve System of this world and to be able to control the finances of every nation. And that is why you see the central bank and so on. And he takes us through these very important questions that we must be asking ourselves. Question: what are banks for? Answer: to make money. For the customers? No, for the banks. Why doesn't bank advertising mention this? It will not be in good taste, but it is mentioned by implication in reference to reserves of, that is $249 million or thereabouts. That is the money that they have made. Out of the customers? I suppose so. The question is, they also mention assets of $500 million or thereabouts. Have they made that too? Answer: not exactly. That is the money they use to make money. I see. And they keep it in a safe somewhere? Not at all. They lend it to customers. I'm just taking you through what are the banks for. Then they haven't got it? No, they don't have it. Then how is it? Is it assets? Answer: they maintain that it would be if they got it back. Question: but they must have some money in a safe somewhere? Answer: on the right, yes, usually $500 million or thereabouts. This is called liabilities. But if they got it, how can they be liable for it? Because it isn't theirs. Now, I'll pause there, and you have to understand something when the banks talks about liabilities and assets and all they have. Today, they may say the banks that they have running businesses of the banks and some other firms and all that. But when the bank says that actually what they have is liability, this is essentially what it means, that if everyone went into the bank and got their money, all their money out, the bank will remain without anything. And this cannot be possible because there are people who have saved their monies in the bank. And that money has been lended to others who don't have any savings in the bank. And so if you will walk in the bank right now and demand all your money, everyone demands their money, it is a liability because they don't have that money. They have lent it to somebody so that they may get profit from that somebody, and they may have some money. And so they started a business without money, but with people's money, so that they may lend out and have bigger margins of profits than the people who really saves the money in the banks. And that is how the banks operate. Continued on, we read, but if they got it, how can they be liable for it? Because it isn't theirs. Then why do they have it? It has been lent to them by customers. You mean customers lend banks money? In effect, they put money in their account, so it is really lent to the bank so that the bank may do business with it. And what do the banks do with it? Lend it to the other customers. But you say that money they lend to others people was assets. Yes, then assets and liabilities must be the same thing. You can't really say that. But you've just said it. If I put $100 into my account, the bank is liable to have to pay it back. So it is liabilities. But they go and lend it to someone else, and he is liable to have to pay it back. So it is assets. It is the same 100, isn't it? Yes, but what? That is the question we have to ask ourselves. This is yes. I go to this other row. then it cancels out. It means, doesn't it, that banks haven't really any money at all? Theoretically, yes, the bank doesn't have money because I deposit $100, they give it to somebody who has to return as 150, and if that person doesn't return, then it is a liability. The bank doesn't have any money. They were counting on the $50 on top of my $100 to have money, but now this person has disappeared with the money, and so they don't have money, and if you go there, they'll not have money to give you. Only what they'll do, actually what they call the assets, this is very interesting, what they call the assets, the bank starts, it is operation with zero. You go there, deposit the money, they have your $100 bill or money lent to them. They give out at the profit of $50, so they have 150 your money, and then 50, which is their asset. They are making money out of your money, and the money they make out of your money is what is called the asset. In which way? That the 50, when you are going to borrow from them, you have to give a surety. Maybe your title deed, your car, your laptop, whichever thing that you can give out as an asset or a surety for returning that money. Now that is their asset. But what if you did this? You disappeared with the asset, or the land actually had a problem, and then you must go to the prison and not pay it, and then they have a case, which means that if somebody who gave them the money comes there to take his money back, they can't find it. They will start looking for a buyer of that farm, which is an asset, or your laptop, which is an asset, and they may not be able to get back the $100 of the first customer who deposited. Because what if the buyer decides that this land is not worth $100 and says that I'll give you $80? Then the bank has a problem that is going to suffer a loss of $20, which also they do not have, or they'll take it from their pockets. What if that land that they have to sell, it has a lot of problems and they have to process a lot of things? It means that they are having, still at the end of the day, liabilities. Now you ask yourself, why are we going all into this? For the simple reason that people think that the banks are helping them, when actually what the bank does is to plunge people in more problems than ever. And we shall see this because in these accumulated assets, actually, which they auction and sometimes retrieve back the money of the other customers and have a profit on it, they make sure that those who have their loans do not pay and finish up their loans, but they continue renewing their loans so that they may continue having more assets or more hold on the assets and make more profits, or plunge people into what we call relying on these systems of finances, which brings them into servitude to them, and they are not let free. You see, many countries are having debts of trillions and millions and billions. Why? Because the banks can't let them to finish up paying their loans. And why can't the bank allow them to finish up paying their loans? Because they'll have nothing in asset. They'll have nothing to make profits on. And so what the banks see, I'm just running ahead of myself. If the bank sees that the nations which have their debts are going to complete their loans, actually you find that countries are plunged in recession, inflations, or some wars, or some other pandemics, so that instead of repaying the loan now, you have to combat the crisis that is within your boundary and then continue borrowing or being lent, and the borrower is the servant to the lender. That is interesting how the banks have played the part of plunging this world that we are in a financial crisis, and that is that it will reach a time that we shall have this inflation and recessions that people can't pay back their money. And when you can't pay back, then there will be fines, actually implicated on the people. Some people will go into prison. Reason because people have not learned what we call financial independence. But people have become dependents, and at the end of the day, for people to seem to pay back their loans and get financial freedom, they'll have to receive the mark of the beast. This is where we are headed, and that is why Revelation 13:17 is so crucial to our study. And so then it cancels out. It means when we are talking about if the banks have money or it doesn't have, that actually there's this canceling out of things, and it is in a theoretic form. And so never mind theoretically, and if they haven't any money, where do they get their reserves of $249 million or thereabouts? I told you that is the money they have made. How? Well, when they lend you $100 to someone, they charge him interest. And so this money that they have loaned out have accumulated to $249 million. And don't think that this is in cash. Some of these things are in assets. Some things that today they can wake up on, those things are not there. Well, when they lend you 100 to someone, they charge him interest. How much? It depends on the bank rate, say 5.5%. That is their profit. Why isn't it my profit? Isn't it my money? It is the theory of banking. It is the theory of banking practice that when I lend them my $100, why don't I charge them interest? You do. You don't say how much. It depends on the bank rate. Say half a percent. Grasping of me rather, but that is only if you are not going to draw the money out again. But of course, I'm going to draw it out again. If I hadn't wanted to draw it out again, I could have buried it in the garden, couldn't I? The answer is they wouldn't like you to draw it out again. And that is what I have been saying, that the banks don't want you to draw out the money you have deposited on them, because it is the money they do with it business. Why not? If I keep it there, you say it's a liability. Wouldn't they be glad if I reduce their liabilities by removing it? No, because if you remove it, they can't lend it to anyone else. But if I wanted to remove it, they'd have to let me. And the answer is not yes, but certainly. And I have just to finish this and then talk about that a little bit if you wanted to withdraw your money. But suppose they've already lent it to another customer, then they let you have someone else's money. Interesting. They take your money, lend it out, and another one comes in, deposit the money, and if you want your money, you are given that. So the other person doesn't have money in the bank. But suppose he wants his too, and they've lent, let me have it. You are being purposely obtuse. I think I've been acute. What if everyone wanted their money at once? It is the theory of banking practice that they never will. So what banks bank on it is not having to meet their commitments. I wouldn't say that. Naturally, well, if there is nothing else you think you can tell me, quite so. Now you can go off and open a banking account. This is irony of ironies. Just one last question, of course. Wouldn't I do better go off and open a bank? And there is no answer for that, because this is suicide in itself. So why wouldn't the banks allow you to withdraw all your money? That is the question that we have to ask ourselves. Let me just put this on the screen. It is very interesting what actually happens. And so there was a crisis in Kenya where actually there was people who are not allowed to withdraw all their money because they had lent out a lot of money to people, and then they started, when the people wanted their money, the money was not there, and so you could not be allowed to withdraw more than 200,000 from the bank. And it was an interesting period. There was queues on the bank. I wouldn't want to go into details talking about that bank because there are many things involved in that, but it was a real great crisis. And so they can't allow you to get all your money because the liability, your money is a liability in assets form, and them depending on the other customers that whatever they have borrowed, they will be able to return it. But you see this issue of lending money and the people will return it. It's not a surety. They are like playing a game, a chess game. They are playing what we may call in our language patapotea, where actually you are gambling in the English language. You are gambling that this thing will go through when at times it cannot go through. And so if everyone walked in the bank and said that we want all our money out of this bank, it will not be possible because there are people who are having that money that belongs to you somewhere. And some are dead, some are in recession, in inflation. I mean, in recession, they are bankrupt and they don't have money to pay back. And so the money is in assets, which the banks cannot actually sell them directly at once and be able to give out the money. And so it is interesting when you go through this. And so the bank thrives on using what it is not theirs. It is a game called legal fraud. And why do I call it legal fraud? Because even people don't read those terms and conditions when they are given the papers to open a bank account, to borrow and deposit their money. Some people just go to the bank, they open bank account, and there are so many papers where people don't go through those things. And they walk away home. When now the crisis has happened, they go back to reading those papers, and you find that legally you have been defrauded your money. Legally you have been defrauded your money because there is a certain amount that if you have in the bank and the bank collapses, you will never be refunded. There is a certain amount if you have in the bank, when it collapses, you can be refunded. But people don't read these things out to find out what is in these notes. And so you open up a bank, you deposit your money, and you are not reading these things. And so when something happens, you are told, did you agree and sign to this agreement? And you ask, what kind of thing are you talking about? They tell you, go back and read those papers, and you find that you have been legally been defrauded of your money, legally. And so the bank thrives on using what is not theirs. It's a game called legal fraud in a financial system or structure. If you have ever done ledger book management, your capital, which is $100, is on the left, and the deposits on the right, which are far exceeding the left. The interest gained from the deposit is what keeps your left side stable. Now, it is good to know how the banks work, lest you be caught up in their maneuvering. And so, Edward G. Griffiths says this in the book Creature from the Jekyll Island. It is interesting to read these books because they help you understand what is happening in this world. And at the end of it, you will see how this is related to Revelation 13:17, that no man might buy or sell unless they have the mark of the beast. No business operation, no going to the banks to get money, no operating anything unless the banks can control what you are doing, and the federal system of this world and the central banks of this world can control everything that is going on. Now, this is from the Creature from Jekyll Island. Edward G. Griffin says, banks do not have money. That is something everyone has to understand. The customer is the boss, yet a slave to it. If all the people will go to withdraw their money, then there you have all the banks in the world collapse. Indeed, they will never let this happen. The financial crises are but an orchestrated reality and a controlled damage. The richest man, who happens to be the main owners of the banks, seeing there is no inflow, causes a recession. And how? They loan out money for business ventures. On the hand, they, through some machinery known to themselves, cause an environment where you can't pay back the interest or money. In the end, they come and own your property because you can't pay back the money. In actuality, your property is of more value than what they gave you. Here lies the stability of a bank which was just about to go bankrupt. They are back on their feet. seeing you are going to lose more than what you borrowed, you go borrow in another bank and pay back your debt in the other bank. The two banks' business thrives as you struggle. The customer who was a boss to the bank has become a slave to the bank via his own money. Don't comment, just what? Think about that, and I'll take you through the thinking. Here is the issue. I go and deposit money in whichever bank you may call it. I don't want to have problems with these names. You go deposit your money in bank A. That is 100 shillings. For what reason? So that it may accumulate to a certain amount that you may apply a loan. And for what? Buying a car or buying a land. And so you start saving, and when it reaches, let us say you started with 100 shillings and maybe you reach 1,000 shillings, and then you can take a loan. But you are not taking a loan of 1,000 shillings which you have in the bank. You take a loan of how much? Of 20,000 to buy what? Your car. And then in the process that you are having that car, what happens? The gasoline hikes the price of the fuel. And so you reach at a point, actually, you are going out of business because of gasoline. And then you are paying back the loan. And then you are threatened with bank A because you can't pay back your loan. The business is not doing well. Gasoline is up. There is an inflation. Recession and inflation has happened in a country. And so you are threatened with bank A that your car will be repossessed and you lose your car and you lose your money. So what do you go? You go to bank B. Borrow out the money on this asset also, or on whichever thing you have. You pay back money to bank A, or you service your loan in bank A, yet you have borrowed the money on the other side so that you may be able to do some work here. It doesn't end there. The chain of events hits you, and then you go to bank 3 to borrow money so as to be able to settle bank B as you are servicing the loan in bank A. And so the chain of slavery continues because you deposited money, borrowed from it, which is not your money, and you have to repay it and you don't have any money. And so the game continues going on and on. And now you who was the boss and first deposited the money in the bank, you are actually becoming a slave where you could have been a boss by actually saving this money in a better way. And so the operation of our monetary system through actually these central banks and Federal Reserve System has much in common with professional football. First, there are certain plays that are repeated over and over again with only minor variations to suit the special circumstances. Second, there are definite rules which the players follow with great precision. And third, there is a clear objection to the game which is uppermost in the minds of the players. And fourth, if the spectators are not familiar with the objective and if they do not understand the rules, they will never comprehend what is going on, which, as far as monetary matters is concerned, is the common state of the varsity of the majority of the people who live in this world, that they have come to a place they don't understand what is money, they don't understand how the banks operate, and they don't understand how their lives have been put to where they are in. It is because they don't learn from others and they don't go into details in knowing what am I getting myself into. Now, the book of Proverbs chapter 22 verse 7 says that the rich ruleth over the poor and the borrower is a servant to the lender. And this is where we have found ourselves until we have come to the issue that the children of Israel one time they found themselves in, having to mortgage everything we have, having to mortgage everything that they have so that they may be able to survive. Now, what is the plan of the banking system at the end of the day? It is important to remember that banks do not really want to have their loans repaid, except as evidence of the dependability of the borrower. They make a profit from interest on the loan, not repayment of the loan. Yes, it is not the repayment of the loan which is most important to them. it is the interest they continue making on the loan. So the more you have their money, the longer you have their money, the more interest they will make, and that is what they want. That is why they don't want you to finish paying up your loan. They entice you to borrow and borrow and borrow, because the longer you have it, the many people that have their loans, the more they have the interest and the more they have the assets. If a loan is paid off, the bank merely has to find another borrower, and that can be an expensive nuisance. It is much better to have the existing borrower pay only the interest and never make payments on the loan itself. That process is called rolling over the debt. One of the reasons banks prefer to lend to governments is that they do not expect those loans ever to be repaid. Mark that one, that the banks will never want the governments to pay the loans. Listen very carefully. It's not the paying of the loans, but the getting of the interest. The reason why they don't want the governments to pay their loans is so that they may continue making an interest on that. And so the end and the crisis that is before us is that the Bible is amazing, and God so gracious that He shows us how things will play out. The mortgage plan did not start today, and it's one of the crises that will usher in the great time of trouble. And so when you look at the book of Genesis chapter 47, verse 13 onwards, we are told that, and there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. Now, I'll go ahead and put on the screen verses 17 as we continue on. We are told, as the land continued to be in famine, and they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses and for the flocks, and for the cattle of the herds, and for the asses, and he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that year. When that year was ended, they came unto him the second year, and said unto him, We will not hide it from my Lord, how that our money is spent. My Lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is not aught left in the sight of my Lord but our bodies and our lands. Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh. And give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land be not desolate. In Nehemiah 5:3, we are told that also there were that said, We have mortgaged our lands, vineyard and houses, that we might buy corn, because of the dearth. There were also that said, We have borrowed money for the king's tribute, and that upon our lands and vineyard. Now, you have to understand, the children of Israel gave everything to the Egyptian government because they didn't have food. And you understand how the devil says that because of want of food and clothing, all the world will be under my control. And so, also in the days of Nehemiah, they gave everything, and they did even sell themselves. If we have not learned the lessons of living without our means, if we have not learned the lesson of independence, we will find ourselves playing in the game of the banks. At the end of the day, because of want of food and clothing, we shall be under the control of the devil. He says that all the world will be under my dominion. And what he says is that they will not be able to keep the Sabbath. They will not be able to obey the law of God because of the want of food and clothing. In which way? As we come to depend on this issue of borrowing, it comes a time we can't pay. And then, you see, what happens is that we will have to work 24 hours, 24/7, to be able to cater for our families and to be able to pay that which we have borrowed. And that will plunge us in a problem that we have never seen, in that keeping the law of God will be impossible, worshiping God will be impossible, because all that we shall be thinking of is, how do we pay back these debts? How do we feed our families? The issue of worship will not be with people who have entered into this issue of borrowing. And that is what actually, this is the master plan of the devil. with this banking system and borrowing, so that people may become servants of the governments of this world, and they may be able to be in a position where they will never serve their Lord. So he says in PK 184.2, talking about this crisis that is coming, thus the world will become mine, I'll be the rule of the earth, the prince of the world, I'll so control the minds under my power that God's Sabbath shall be a special object of contempt. A sign, I'll make the observance of the seventh day a sign of disloyalty to the authorities of earth. Human laws will be made so stringent that men and women will not dare to observe the seventh day Sabbath. For fear of wanting food and clothing, they will join with the world in transgressing God's law. The earth will be wholly under my dominion. And so this is where all of us are headed if a self-sustainable plan shall not be followed, and living without means and within our means. And I talked about it in the previous presentation that to be able to face the crisis in Revelation 13:17, we are encouraged to have a piece of land and grow our own foods and pay all our debts, and if we will live on porridge and bread alone, never to go back and borrow. Now, in country living, we are told in CL 18.3, many are unwilling to earn their bread by the sweat of their brow, and they refuse to till the soil. But the earth has blessings hidden in their depths for those who have courage and will and perseverance to gather her treasures. Fathers and mothers who possess a piece of land and a comfortable home are kings and queens. Many farmers have failed to secure adequate returns from their land because they have undertaken the work as though it was a degrading employment. They do not see that there is a blessing in it for themselves and their families. All they can discern is the brand of servitude. Their orchards are neglected, the crops are not put in at the right season, and a mere surface work is done in cultivating the soil. The greatest robbery is where a system pushes its captives to be lazy while encouraging them to live lavishly. Now, I want you to think about this, what I'm telling you, because we are living in a very strange world where the youths are encouraged to live a very lavish life. People buy things even which they could have never thought of buying them. Why? Because the banks are ready to loan them money, and it's a strategy to keep them hooked up in that system so that they may not find time to worship God. And so you find people with very expensive things, not that they worked and got those things, but because the banks were ready to give them free-flowing money. At the end of the day, they have to pay it. But then it keeps that this bank lends you, and then you go to borrow in another bank to pay the other banks, and so the chain goes like that. And so the greatest calamity that has ever happened amongst us is having this system that pushes its captives to be lazy while encouraging to live lavishly. And you see these various institutions, here is a smartphone of 100,000 Kenya shillings, that is around $1,000. And we are giving it on pay slowly, or pay in bits, or pay in deposits and all that stuff. And so, and service it in at a monthly period. And so people are borrowing and borrowing. You take something so expensive and you are paying it monthly or daily. And so the system teaches people to be lazy, to have this easy money, live lavishly without having that money. On the other hand, citizens create employment by paying taxes for a job that they can do or they are already doing. Almost all civil governments exist on this plan of robbery. And so what you find is that the people who create the problem seldom suffer the economic consequences of their action. If you look closely at the financial crises that have ever occurred, and notably 2008 financial crisis, you find that the real perpetrators ran away with huge payoffs or applied for resignation before the collapse, walking away with millions of dollars in terms of payoff. And you don't have to go far away. You have just to go on YouTube, and if you go on YouTube and type the Iceland recession, and there is this film actually on I don't know if it has been taken down, the country which was thriving so much, but it went down. The Iceland economic crisis, I think that is it. And the film, I think it was taken down. I have it in no, it is there. If you go to YouTube and let me see if I can just get it where you can be able to see it. I'll go to Firefox. Do I have Firefox? Yes, Mozilla Firefox. If you go to your YouTube channel, and here I have it, and you have this the financial crisis 2008, the inside story you weren't told. This film, it's interesting to watch this Sony Pictures classic film where actually Iceland got itself in financial troubles. And it's a great story. The global economic crisis of 2008 cost tens of millions of people their savings, their jobs, and their homes. But you find that the perpetrators of this this issue, actually, when Iceland was thriving so much, the people actually who made this happen, and you can go and watch the film, got away with this issue. They got away with this issue. Very, very interesting. You can go and check out that film. Once again, I have to just show it so that people may know what I'm talking about. That is, the title is The Financial Crisis 2008, The Inside Story You Weren't Told. That is what you have to watch, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. And so, the people who create the problem seldom suffer the economic consequences of their action, because this is the plan of the enemy. And so, when a bank tells you that it is coming for the money it has borrowed you in terms of a loan, in reality, it is your neighbor at their throat demanding from the bank what he has loaned them in terms of a deposit. The truth is that the loanee, via interest, is paying that bank for using money which is not theirs. And I would want to stop there. This is just an introduction of what we shall be going through. And I can tell us this: there is no financial system that can match the Edenic system of finance, where God put man in the Garden of Eden and told him to tend it. You ask yourself that, how will it be if everyone is a farmer? Now, how was it when everyone was a farmer in the days of Noah, in the days of Abraham, and in the days of the patriarchs? And we were talking about something, and somebody says, you see, don't be silly on this. The world has changed. The farms will not produce the way they used to produce in those days. And I was talking to this person and I asked, you look here, can you tell me what is the real problem? Is it that the farm have stopped producing, or there is something that you are not understanding about this? If the sin problem will be solved, don't you think that the Lord will be able to bless our farms? What if I showed you the evidence that if we solve the sin problem, that the Lord will be able to solve this issue? And that is what I want to leave you with, because sometimes you talk about these things and they tell you that the kind of the system you want to get us back in cannot happen because the land is cursed and it doesn't produce the bounties therein. But I want to show you something as we close, because I believe in a God who owns this earth and can do things that me and you cannot do. And so I take my story to the book of Genesis, and this is the book of Genesis, chapter 26, and then I'll take you to the book of Deuteronomy. Genesis 26 from verse 1. It says, "And there was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. And the Lord appeared unto him and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I'll give all these countries, and I'll perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. And I'll make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. And Isaac dwelt where? In Gerar. And the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, She is my sister, for he feared to say, She is my wife. Lest, said he, the men of the place should kill for Rebekah, because she was there, she was fair to look upon. And it came to pass, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked at the window and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah, his wife. And Abimelech said, What is this thou hast done unto us? One of the people might lightly have lying with thy wife, and thou shouldest have brought guiltiness upon us. And Abimelech charged all his people, saying, He that toucheth this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. Now verse 12, Then Isaac sowed in that land, and received in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. This is what God did, just to prove to these people that he loved this man, and this man was faithful unto him. He sowed in that land, which had been ravished with famine, and he harvested 100-fold. And the Lord has said that he will bless us. The Lord has said that he will bless us. And you look at the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, and we are told what the Lord will do if we are faithful unto him. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. And this blessing shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. Blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed thou shalt be in the field, where you grow your crops, where you go to look for your daily bread. It shall be blessed. Blessed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy ground. You see that? Again, when you sow in the ground, it shall be blessed. And the fruit of thy cattle, the increase of thy kine, and the flocks of thy sheep. Blessed shall be thy basket and thy store. Blessed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shalt thou be when thou goest. The Lord shall cause thine enemies that rise against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee in one way, and flee there the 7 ways. Again, I want us to see also this in the book of Amos. Amos chapter 9, if we are faithful, that the Lord said, Behold, the days come, said the Lord, that the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes him that soweth seed, and the mountain shall drop sweet wine, and all the hills shall melt. I will bring the captivity of my people of Israel, and they shall build the waste cities, and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards, and drink the wine thereof. They shall also make gardens, and eat the fruit of them. And I'll plant them upon their land, and they shall no more be pulled up out of their land which I have given them, saith the Lord thy God. And so when you go to the book of country living, once again, we are assured by God in CL, this is the promises of the Lord. In CL, many are unwilling to earn their bread by the sweat of their brow, and they refuse to till the soil. But the earth has blessing hidden in her depth for those who have courage and will and perseverance to gather her treasures. Fathers and mothers who possess a piece of land and a comfortable home are kings and what? And queens. And so why don't we have this bountiful reaping? Many farmers have failed to secure adequate returns from their land because they have undertaken the work as though it was a degrading employment. They do not see that there is a blessing in it for themselves and their families. All they can discern is the brand of servitude. Their orchards are neglected, the crops are not put in at the right season, and a mere surface work is done in cultivating the soil. So this is it, brothers and sisters. Revelation 13:17, that no man might buy or sell unless they have the mark of the beast. What the banking system and the financial system of this world is doing is to plunge people into servitude, that they may not be able to use the skills that God has given unto them, to use the Edenic skills to be self-independent, not to depend on the bread of borrowing. And Satan will make sure that we shall be borrowing until Christ comes, and we shall not have a place of worship. For the man who is in debts doesn't have a mind to worship God in truth and in spirit, because he is ever thinking how he will be able to meet the financial goals of the bank, of the family, and other things in his life. I pray that as we go through this material, that we will learn one or two things and be able to see that the only solution to us not receiving the mark of the beast for want of food and clothing is to go God's way once again. And so may the Lord bless us, may the Lord keep us, and it is interesting the times that we are living in, when we are hearing that the next economic collapse will be severe than the times of the Great Depression. It will be more than what actually was there in 2008. And you see, it will cause many people their hearts to fail for fearing what is coming upon the world. My prayer is I may be saved in the kingdom of God, and you may be saved. But the preparation starts now, not tomorrow. So that we shouldn't be carrying any weight on us that will make us look back like Lot's wife looked back. You have borrowed, you have really made your house good and everything is good, and you are told leave this place, and you are thinking of just paying back the loan and repossessing these things, and you look back like Lot's wife looked back. I look back like Lot's wife looked back. If we don't learn the lessons today and stop depending on these banks which have their plan in place, and the ultimate plan of the devil is to make sure people don't go to heaven. And so let us be aware. God tells us that he reveals these things in time so that we may be prepared. A prudent man foreseeth danger and hideth himself, but the simple one looks on and is overtaken. I pray that we may be part of the prudent men and the wise virgins. Otherwise, may the Lord bless us, and may we keep thinking about these things. Bye for now.